Okay, folks, let me just sum up. I just Skyped with Terence Jenkins last night. I finally heard from him after a silence of 1.5 months. Around June the 21st, when Terence was Skyping with me, uh, Brent Spiner said, "Hey, yoo-hoo, Terence, something's going on with Matthew McConaughey's penis." And what was happening was all of my men's penises were being attacked. There was a very serious malware in the computer system at Church of Gail, and it caused all the men at Church of Gail to cause them to have all sorts of penis afflictions. It was very painful, and let me just, uh, they spent, the ordeal with the penises lasted for at least a good week in that June. So like from June 21st to June 28th, they were just having this ordeal with penises because of Jesuit trigger programming on the Church of Gail computers. They spent a lot of time in sick bay. Matthew practically had a vagina at that point. Um, and what happened was Vladimir Putin, they found out that he ended up getting his bladder exploded. They had to put him in stasis where they froze him, and all sorts of things happened to him. He had heart attacks, and right in the middle of an operation to fix him for a heart attack, he woke up, and then he judo chopped the doctor. He felt bad about that, but this is like gut reflex with Vladimir, and when he woke up, he heroically pushed himself, which explains why the accurate pictures of Vladimir in the media made him look like he was almost dead. And he managed to fly Church of Gail down to China. And on the way down, several nukes almost hit them because I guess they were going so fast. The Earth radars are not as good as Church of Gail radars, and they thought that Church of Gail was a nuke or a nuke, and Vladimir had to outmaneuver that. And he heroically, even while his body was like thawing out from being frozen and everything, he managed to bring Church of Gail to land in China. And then he fell asleep, and then the rest of the guys took over. And I think Brent Spiner was a leader in that. And they chose to go to China because Hu Jintao is, uh, you know, on my marriage list. So they figured that'd be a good place to try to fix their penises. Hu Jintao apparently assigned some Chinese doctors to work on them, and they agreed with the doctors that they would be put under anesthesia and allow the doctors to operate on them. When they woke up, they looked down at their penises and saw this crisscross, just two crisscross bandages, and they realized that all of their penises had been surgically removed and they all had vaginas. And they were so mad. And they had been asleep for 2 days for the operation when they woke up and saw this. So they spent a day looking for the Chinese doctors, and Vladimir, I believe he judo chopped them, and they got their penises back. Their penises were in excellent condition because the reason the Chinese doctors stole the penises is because they had small ones and they wanted big ones. So they made their restored penises perfect. So with perfectly restored penises, Brent spent 3 days doing surgery to install the penises back on the guys. They left Matthew McConaughey's penis alone. So, but the other guys had to get their penises put back on. And then after that, the next job was to fix the malware on the computers at Church of Gail. They had to ground Church of Gail for quite a while to do this. So this must have taken like around a month. And they spent a month trying to fix it. Finally, they decided a system restore was not working, and they decided to follow my advice in one of my videos, and they completely destroyed the computers and just built them brand new from the bottom up. These new computers are not quite as sophisticated technologically as the ones that they had to destroy, because that Church of Gail, Jesus built that church. But at least they're safe from the horrible malware, which made it, this malware made it, they couldn't even communicate at all with the outside world. If they did, their penises would be attacked. And that's why I didn't hear from them. And so basically that's a summation of what happened. I think I've covered the most important things. My sister had nothing to do with it. In fact, she grew a penis as a result of this malware. She's been safely in Church of Gail prison the entire time. She grew a penis, though once they fixed the malware, she lost her penis. So, but while she had a penis, she raped a couple of the women in the Church of Gail prison. Yeah, she had a penis with semen. And before they could stop her, she did manage to, my sisters. I don't know how she could be so different from me. I don't understand it. Anyways, this is what has been happening, folks. I think I covered the main stuff. Okay. One thing they had to worry about, one reason they took so long to contact me, was they were scared that if they communicated with me, the contamination from Church of Gail could flow onto my computer and that I would grow a penis. So they were so worried about that, they even had a discussion like, what do we do if Gail gets a penis? They decided they would love me anyway and just love me brain to brain. I told them I don't think Jesus would let me grow a penis. Anyways, here's a letter that I got from Brent. It said, my darling Gail, it feels so good to know that my communication will finally reach you in the form of this letter. As we both know, brain-to-brain communications can often be quite foggy, so I'll do my best to clear up as many details as I can about the recent events that have transpired. All of Church of Gail's computers were hijacked by a very powerful and sophisticated Jesuit malware. When even a system restore failed to fix the problem, we were at a devastating and frustrated loss, but thankfully Vladimir took your brilliant advice. We have since employed and completed your destroy and replace strategy. All infected computers have since been burned and removed from the church, and we've finished work on installing a brand new system with all brand new computers on Church of Gail. This new system may not be as advanced as the one we had before and will quite likely have some bugs, but at least it allows us to communicate with you electronically again. As to the nature of the malware, this is where things became quite unsettling for us. I suppose I'll just tell you how this first started. I was having a deep discussion in our lounge room with Matthew McConaughey about the most recent sermon I delivered at our church. To make a long story short, he had some personal questions about my message that he wanted to ask me about in private. We were sitting together on the couch, huddled close, trying not to let anyone in on our discussion. All of a sudden, Matthew's face grew red with discomfort. He reached down into his pants as if something had happened. His hand paused around his genital area. With angst in his voice, he whispered to me, Brent, I think I need your help with something more urgent than the sermon right now. His eyes looked anxious. He quickly unzipped, stood up in front of me, and pulled down his pants. As Matthew's medical doctor, as well as one of his best friends, I knew the dimensions of his penis like the back of my own hand. Not only was his penis painfully inflamed, red and angry looking, it was an entire quarter-inch smaller than I remembered at his last checkup. This alarmed me. I removed my handheld medical scanner from my pocket and scanned his genitals. Necrotizing fasciitis, flesh-eating bacteria, Matthew, and it's advanced. It's already starting to devour your penis. If it progresses any further, you're not going to have a penis. When did these symptoms start? Just now. It's so painful I can scream. I don't want to alarm anyone. As I stared in horror, Matthew's penis was growing smaller and smaller. His eyes welled up with pain, and I could see him holding back tears in terror at losing what little left he had of his penis. At the other side of the room, I noticed Terrance was Skyping with you on his laptop. I don't know how it came over me, but with every message that I heard him send, I noticed Matthew losing another margin of his length. In an instant, my intuition flooded over me, and I stood up and shouted, Terrance, stop sending messages. This is an emergency. I'm coming. Hold on. I just got to tell Gail where I'm heading off to. You don't understand, I yelled as Terrance continued to send more messages. Terrance, Matthew moaned, sweat running down his face. Please stop. I can't take it. The messages continued to send. With a yell, my knees buckled as I felt my penis fracture in what turned out to be 16.5 places. Terrance, I shouted, my groin throbbing. Oh my goodness, Terrance suddenly exclaimed, lurching over and grabbing the middle of his pants. I saw his face fill with fright as he unzipped and looked at his penis. Brent, you've got to come help me. What's wrong, Terrance? My penis be white. I got's a white man's penis. It's even circumcised. No sooner had Tarrant spoke, other voices around the room began erupting in fright as men all over began experiencing bizarre and frightening afflictions to their nether regions. Everyone calm down, I declared firmly, swallowing my own pain to take control. Men, please get to sickbay. Tarrant's unplug the computer now. But Gail! No, trust me, this is for our own safety. An emergency roundup brought all the male church members to the infirmaries. The lines wrapped around the entire medical floor. I must have worked a 24-hour shift that day, taking diagnostic inspections of the genitals of every single man on board. Some had been afflicted with strange diseases. Others were malformed and bent. The men on the marriage list suffered the worst. My own penis had 16.5 fractures, so mutilated it looked like an accordion. Matthew McConaughey had a flesh-eating bacterial infection of his penis, causing it to continually shrink as it became eaten away. Terrence Jenkins' penis became white and circumcised. Gerard Butler developed late-stage penis cancer, turning his whole penis into a deadly tumor. Keanu Reeves' penis had grown massively long and bent that it burrowed its way into his own anus. Hugh Jackman was hesitant about pulling down his pants, and when I asked what was wrong, Gerard whispered to me that it was his trouser snake. I assumed because of Gerard's heritage, he was from Scotland, he was merely using that as a euphemism. But when Hugh finally gave in and dropped his pants, everyone in the infirmary turned and gasped in shock as his penis had in fact transformed into a live snake. To be perfectly specific, it was a spitting cobra. The skin of its neck flared open, its jaws parted, and I heard Matthew let out a high-pitched squeal as he received a shot of venom right in his eye. I hurriedly threw a bag over the snake and told Hugh to pinch behind the head to keep it from biting anyone. Hugh waddled off with his pants around his ankles, trying his best to smother his snake into submission. The only man I didn't inspect was Vladimir, who insisted everything was fine, until 3 days later he rushed into my office exclaiming he couldn't pee. He said that an erection lasting 24 hours or more was normal for him, and he would normally just think about Sarah Avery whenever he had to urinate. But he knew something was wrong when his erection remained. He brought in a bottle of vodka and swung his penis against the glass, shattering the bottle in front of me. "Still it is hard like Thor hammer," he yelled in anguish. It turned out he had severe priapism, and by the time I injected all of the muscle relaxers I had in my office, his bladder exploded. We had to put him in emergency cryogenic stasis to save his life, while we awaited the staff and resources to perform a cleanup of his internal organs and a bladder transplant. With our computers infected and inflicting more damage and disease to our men's genitals with every outgoing communication we sent, we decided to make an emergency landing in China. With Hu Jintao's help, I knew we could replace our computers quickly and have all our men treated promptly. The onslaught was simply too much for us to handle, and I didn't want to risk losing any of our men. We landed the church and hurried all of the men into Chinese hospitals to begin work on repairing the penises. I thought everything was going according to plan and was relieved to finally be able to set my worries aside about the other men as well as have my own penis taken care of. We agreed to go under anesthesia to have our penises restored. To our horror, when we awoke, our penises had vanished. They'd been amputated, and all that was left on our smooth groins was a crisscross of Band-Aids. I immediately asked the nurse what happened. She explained the male Chinese doctors were so jealous of our penises they stole them. Shocked, I said, "Where'd they go?" She said perhaps they'd be putting them on the Chinese black market. Apparently soup made from white man's penis is some sort of ancient medicine for virility. I yanked the IVs out of my arms and jumped out of bed, gathered the men, and we went down to hunt those doctors. We didn't have to go very far. We found them in another surgical room in the process of amputating their own penises and replacing them with ours. "Stop!" I yelled. "Those penises don't belong to you." The Chinese doctors laughed. They told us how, when they have our big white penises, they would finally get to feel sex and would be banging all sorts of women. We wouldn't have this. Vladimir charged forth with judo chops to incapacitate the greedy Chinese men. The other men in our group helped restrain them while I pried the surgical tools from their hands and worked on removing our penises from their bodies. Once the penises were ours, they were put under arrest, and I decided to undertake the process of replacing all the men's penises myself. Interestingly, Matthew McConaughey's penis had been fully restored, and the Chinese doctors hadn't stolen his penis at all. I thought maybe they felt bad for him because the bacteria had eaten so much of his penis that it gave him a vagina. They had to perform a sex change operation to fix it, though. It was actually quite fascinating. As you can imagine, I'm quite exhausted from our long ordeal. I'm happy to report that all the men are happy and healthy, and our computers are working just fine. The Church of Gail is safely back in space, and I am writing to you in the comfort of my quarters. Sweet dreams tonight, my dear. I adore you. Your husband, Brent Spiner. Okay, folks, that's what happened.